Okay, so now we're going to pick up another thread of leadership because Phil Davison from the Royal College of Psychiatry is going to talk about ways in which that Royal College and its members have acknowledged the importance of this issue. That's also true of a number of other Royal Colleges. So in the past, Phil has been one of 8 regional chairs of the Royal College of Psychiatrists and developed a working relationship with Professor Sir Muir Gray and the Centre for Sustainable Healthcare. And I do recommend you look at the Centre for Sustainable Healthcare website to see the very different projects that are happening. There are, for example, green kidney dialysis projects. Fascinating projects that are really important. So Phil has been the college lead for sustainability, and the college decided to invest heavily in it. So there was a 2-year research fellowship that Daniel Morn took up and did some very good work and research and inspiration. And there's now a scholarship program for trainee psychiatrists where they spend part of their week developing sustainable projects in the areas where they're working. There's an associate registrar for sustainability who sits on the governing body and a sustainability committee. So we look forward to hearing from you, Phil, about these projects.
That was most of my talk. Judith's just giving
You sent me this.
Yeah. Okay, so this is me. I'm a consultant psychiatrist, so I'm a health service doctor. I'm also attached to the university, and I've got the Royal College emblem on because I've done all this work with the Royal College of Psychiatrists. And this was my title. Okay. And I am shamelessly going to try and hook you into the talk as well. This is a picture of me and the former Prime Minister standing together. That's to intrigue you. But I'm also going to give you all the take-home messages at the start as well, just like Andrew did. Now, this is the Prime Minister in our hospital. We invited him in to talk, and this is him saying exactly what I'm going to tell you now. He gave my words. And one thing you can congratulate him for is picking up things so fast. It's just unbelievable. Because this is Dan, that Judith mentioned. This is the Chief Executive of the hospital. This is Mr. Cameron. And I'm standing here, just out of shot. And while they're speaking, he turns to me and says, basically he's saying, I've no idea what I'm doing here. What am I doing here? And I'm saying, you're here because it's NHS Sustainability Day, and you're here to support us in our work. That's what you're here for. Okay, what are you doing? Right, well, we've developed this model of sustainability, we're doing research, and we've got 4 principles of sustainability that are very, very important that we're trying to get through to the medical profession, because the medics are leaders. If they can push these ideas out, it could be very influential. So that's me telling him. I'm not, you can't see me telling him. And that's him delivering the message. So I'm delighted to be here today to support Dan and Phil in their work on sustainability. And of course, we all follow the 4 principles of sustainability, which are 1, patient empowerment. 2, if we can, we prevent illnesses wherever we can. 3, we offer the best value healthcare possible. That's in terms of outcome, but keeping in mind sustainability. And only then do we consider carbon. And he delivered it exactly as I told him. 1, prioritise prevention. Empower individuals and communities. Improve value. This is a lot more complex than it actually sounds, because we get the best outcome for the least of these: economic, social, and environmental cost. There's a lot in that slide, actually. Well, that is a summary. And only then consider carbon. That's it again. So that's your take-home message. If you want to sleep now, I won't be offended. Okay? I'll take it I've got a soothing voice. That's all. Oh, this is for the younger of you. Apparently this is a selfie. That's me leaning in, just to make sure I'm on, yeah? Fingers of you will know it. That's a slightly better one. I don't, that's me just, you know. Right, so I've only got 2 parts to the talk. I've got the evidence for the mental health impacts of climate disruption, and then second, the response to the medical profession. And like everyone's going to be talking about it today, Mr. Trump has appeared. And that is depressing and much more complicated, as Sally has told us. And it has thrown me a little bit, only a little bit. I've decided I'll mention it and I'll try and carry on with what I wanted to say, because I think that's all we can do, really. But this is significant. He's trying to get out of the Paris Climate Agreement, and he is saying climate change is a hoax. So it is depressing. So in terms of mental health impacts, that is depressing. Okay, so this is what I'm going to talk about. Okay, this is the first part for mental health impacts of climate disruption. What I'm going to do here, there is a growing literature of mostly psychiatrists, but actually Helen Berry. These are people we work with. So I've quoted the two people we've got contacts with now. And as Judith said, we've become quite a machine in the college. I'm delighted about this. A very sustainable machine, in the sense that we now have a whole committee that responds to the governing body of the college. And the lead of that committee is called an associate registrar. So he responds to the registrar, who is the person that runs our college. So our college has taken this really seriously, which I'm delighted about. So we do have some links now. So if you wanted to look up, these are the people I think have done really good research in this area: Lisa Page and Helen Berry. And because I've only got 20 minutes, I'm going to summarise the sort of things that's coming out of the literature, which is that it is fairly obvious. There are bound to be effects, both directly and indirectly, from climate change. Obviously, raised temperature, severe weather events, they seem to link to elevated rates of violence and aggression. But it just makes common sense that you're going to either get depressed or post-traumatic stress disorder or anxiety disorders. But there's a lot of indirect evidence coming from various things following climate change, such as drought, scarcity of resources, migration, community infrastructure problems, especially from Australian work. It just makes common sense. So there's growing amounts of evidence. Just to focus that down a bit, both Lisa and Helen are saying the poorest and those already mentally ill are most severely affected. That makes common sense as well. We are lacking research. That's why I'm quoting our two, but there is more coming. The temperature and risk of death is very interesting. I would encourage you to look at this. Lisa had access to general practitioner data and has shown in this country that there's an increased rate of suicide when the temperature rises. I mean, it's just hard to follow, except there might be more violence or some sort of aggression towards herself in this country. That's all we're speculating. But psychosis, dementia and substance abuse becomes more problematic with the temperature rise as well. Very interesting, isn't it? And both Lisa and Helen say, well, that's got to have implications for how we develop mental health services. We've got to be ready for climate change. Helen works, her program's called People and Place. She's found the same in Australia, that the poorest and already ill, physically or mentally, have the severest effects, and we need to be ready for it. So the responses here from the research are, we need to mitigate. That means we need to practice slightly differently so that we are not adding to the problem. And I'm going to say a lot more about that in a second. I know I've only got 10 minutes, but I'll manage it. We need to be flexible in terms of our services to deal with the problems that are coming to us. And we need to think already about our next generation. This is, you can almost see the policy of our committee coming out of this. So I'm going to tell you about the response of the medical profession. But you've got to engage the medics, because they've got their head in the sand as well. But I'm also going to ask you why the Royal College of Psychiatrists has got into this, which is slightly weird, because we're not as high carbon a specialty as some. For example, renal medicine, as Judith just mentioned. Now, you're not supposed to be able to read this, because I'm going to talk you through it, okay? I'm very sad to say, this is one of our group made this graph. Have you seen this graph, David? You've not seen it. This is a magic graph, this, which will just get the point home. And he didn't publish it. And it's now been published by another group. Basically, these blobs are countries, okay? And this is the healthcare spend as a proportion for each country. And that is the carbon emissions as a percentage of the world carbon emissions. So you've got carbon emissions there, healthcare spend. So you've got France here, spends quite a bit on healthcare, but not many emissions. Does that make sense? So they're not very high on this side. You've got Japan here. You're not supposed to read it, so I can talk it through for you, okay? Japan has a lot more emissions, although they don't spend so much on healthcare. So you would sort of suspect Japan's doing more investigative sort of work that's going to emit more carbon, but they're not spending that much on healthcare. We are there, we don't emit that much, we don't spend that much, although we emit a considerable amount in the health service. You've got Germany here, spending more, emitting more. Does that all make sense to start off with? This is a really good message, this. Because all that graph, all those blobs go into a little corner. They go down here. You've got one country standing out here on its own. Any idea what that country is? So that is the United States. They spend 16% of their money on healthcare, and they emit more than 1% of the world's carbon, the healthcare system. So we think that's quite convincing. And there's another group now done this similar work, and they've said the American healthcare system would be the 13th emitter of carbon if you rank them by countries. And actually what we've got here, this is international aviation, the whole of international aviation, not local but international, and Australia, plotted on the same graph, just to give you an idea of this. So, you'd think the medics would get that, wouldn't you? What we are doing is leading to carbon emissions. That's the message, you see, so we thought that was very powerful. The Lancet has got it, that's our highest impact journal. And this is from David's unit. This is the NHS, so we're not that bad compared to other countries, but we still emit massive amounts of carbon in the health service. And the carbon is not from the buildings, because the buildings, our colleagues doing the buildings know about emissions and are working it out. This is the emissions that we've got to think about. This is from clinical practice. It's called procurement because that's the way you describe it. It's the medication, it's the surgery, it's everything to do with treating patients. So if we want to cut down emissions, we have to look at this part. That means changing the way we clinically practice. So it's quite a bold message, but tricky one. So I'm moving on to a bit why the Royal College of Psychiatrists. As I've said, we managed to persuade the college to get interested in it, and they did invest in it. So that's probably why. I'm going to say a little bit more about why as time goes on. But we have come up with 3 strands in the college. So we've got this paradigm that I've told you about. I've said it again because I want you to get that message. You've already seen that slide. We've already done research. Dan has 3 papers out looking at various aspects of sustainability and carbon now. Carbon is difficult, I've got to be honest, but he is doing that. And we've done this profile raising, so you can see we're thinking, how do we help medics change? Well, we've come with policies from the top, and we're thinking, can we get them to change their practice from the bottom, as you'll see. So we've various papers, research papers. This is with Helen. I'll just show you one as an example. But we've got some high impact things we've done. We got into Private Eye. We're very proud of that. Dan and I were delighted when we saw that. That's referring to Dan and I in the report he wrote. He was my research registrar. And we've produced documents like this that you can get. You just go onto the Royal College website, they're open to anyone, and they explain the principles of what we've done and why we've done it. It's very good. Dan wrote it. I mean, we all helped him, but it's a really well done document. And we did this. This caused a lot of fuss. It was basically saying if we were more sensible with the way we looked after patients, we could cut down a lot of waste. Stop over-investigating patients, for example. Or we are being defensive as medics. Can we do less investigations? Are they useful? And that has led to this campaign, the Choosing Wisely campaign, which is quite big for all medical colleges. So we all have to say, what 5 things would we stop doing that are not actually useful for patients and the planet? And we've also started to do this. We've given advice to the GP commissioners who commission our services. So that is us launching a commissioning guide so that when the GPs, the finance of the health service are very complicated, so general practitioners really buy the services now. So we are now trying to help them to buy sustainable services by producing this guide. This is a jolly event that we cycled from Oxford in just for publicity, which went quite well. But that person there is Dame Sue Bailey, and she's been very helpful because she leads the amalgam of all the Royal Colleges linked together, and she leads that. And to be fair, she has helped us a lot. And that's the Psychiatry Czar. So we had a bit of impact. And that's the report. You can get that as well if you want it. You just get it free online. So I'm finishing now. Just want to go back to why us? Why have we got involved in this? Now, this is embarrassing. At least I was slim then. This is a picture of me. Actually, it's outside the Freud Museum, funnily enough. When I saw it, I was amazed. But it's to think about the glasses. I think as psychiatrists, we are relatively able to see other perspectives. I think we're quite good at that. I think we're probably better at that than other medical professionals. That's open to debate. But we are reasonable at that, and we can help our patients see things from another perspective. I think we're reasonably good at that. And when, just to take that analogy a bit further, when we see patients, we look through our lens. We all look through our lens of our own experience and life. But we look through a medical lens to try and make a diagnosis first. But we also have a therapy lens on us as well, probably like yourself. So we're thinking medically and what is happening in the relationship as we see every patient. So it's 2 pairs of glasses we have on. All we're saying is, can you put on a 3rd pair of glasses and think sustainably as you practice medicine? That's the message we're trying to put out. If you say it like that, I think the medics can get it. It's not too much, because the health service is under terrible pressure. If we can just help them do it, that's the aim, to think creatively. So we are aiming to change the lens of our healthcare professionals. And we are leaders. We're leaders in psychiatry. It's good to hear that other colleges are now coming on board with us. So we're not necessarily leading all the Royal Colleges now, but we're part of that group. So Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, has got the message. I'm just hoping you might have got the message as well. And that is it.